Good evening and welcome to the Refraction talk about mental health and disability with Elle, um, Elle Conant, who is also representing Rune Noel, and Robert Andy Coombs. And we also have Miss Rhoda Garland from CRPD, which is an organization based in Malta. But I pass on the hand to each of you to introduce yourselves, starting with Elle, you can start yourself.
Hi, I'm Elle Conant. I'm from the United States, and I am an autistic trans artist who works primarily with photography.
Okay, that's interesting. Robert, you can go next.
Hi, I'm Robert Andy Coombs. I am a disabled artist, photographer. My work mainly explores disability and sexuality, and I live in sunny Miami, Florida.
And Rhoda, you can introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Rhoda Garland. I'm a disabled activist. I'm the director at the Commission for the Rights of Persons with Disability, with a specific interest in intersectionality.
Very good. Okay, so Refraction was a very exciting journey into the lives of different people in LGBT rights, but the focus of this talk will focus on the lives of those who are dealing with mental health and disability issues. So I want to start with Elle, portraying the trans life as an autistic person. How did you deal with the artistic work that you've shown in your photography to represent LGBT lifestyles with mental health?
I think Rue and I, we both took this approach of just simply documenting the parts of our lives that were affecting us the most. We started a relationship, and naturally emotions and mental health become a very big part of that when you're deeply involved with someone. So we just tried to be very honest with our depiction of what it was like, that it is hard, that it is difficult, that the world isn't made for us, and we had to try to carve out space for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of it is about, finding space for ourselves to exist, which is falls in line with disability and queerness, both.
That's a good. I really like the description you said about finding space for us to exist. I'll be getting to this point later with another question, but I don't know if Robert would like to say anything regarding disability, because your work was it showed different aspects. There was also bondage shown, interrelations with different people. How is that linked with with mental health, and what was your goal in representing disability in that work?
I think my work kind of coincides with Elle's. I really just wanted to show a wide range of the disability experience, and the reason why I focused on myself was because I since my disability, like I've grown sexually, not fitting in a standard. that was kind of thrown out the window as soon as I broke my neck.
Hmm.
And so it really started when my medical professionals didn't know how to talk about disability and sexuality and how my body worked and how to like engage safely in sexual acts. But also they were even more uncomfortable with me being, a queer disabled person. So I had to do a lot of exploring myself, scouring the internet, trying to find some representation of like queer disability or just disability and sex in general. I would research a lot of different porn sites, looking for other men who have spinal cord injuries or wheelchair users, masturbating, and just trying to find some representation of myself out there. And it was few and far between. So when it comes down to it, I am making images that I want to see in the world. So the images that I thought were lacking, that's really why I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I wanted to wonder question. Let's start with Elle. How do you find LGBT representation in art with regards to mental health and disability? So the questions that come to mind is, what do we expect, sort of stereotypes, and what is considered the norm and the status quo?
So with regards to, I can speak specifically to being autistic, but the norms it's not very well understood at all. There are, it's based largely on sensory, it changes your sensory inputs. It can affect how you communicate with people, the different types of communication available to you at any given time. Sorry. Can you repeat the question? I kind of lost my train of thought.
What I was saying that the question is, how do you feel LGBT people are represented in art with regards to mental health and disability?
Okay. I'm not sure what most representation out there is overwhelmingly that is queer, is white, thin, pretty. It's more palatable to cis standards a lot of times. I feel like so that is unfortunate that our mental health struggles, which are so prevalent within our community, and our disability, along the lines of autistic people, 70% are non-heterosexual. So when the vast majority of a disabled population is queer, it becomes very important to represent it, I think, and making those representations accurate.
What about you, Robert? What do you think?
I agree. And I think what I think is important is that, what we're doing is we are representing like our communities as being that, you know, we are both from, you know, this queer disabled community, and, you know, we're able to tell our stories, rather than having an outsider, who, you know, especially when it comes to physical disability, much like the rest of the world, arts are pretty inaccessible. Thankfully, like, I'm privileged enough to be able to like photograph and figure out ways and have a good support system in order to create my work.
Mm-hmm.
Which it gives it gives a more accurate view of what disability is because it's coming from me, as a disabled queer person. And so much of our history, especially with physical disability, like I was saying, have been physically able-bodied people photographing us in various different ways. And you know, it's always like their able-bodied lens, you know, this able-bodied gaze on the disabled. And that's why I think it's really important that we are telling our own stories. You know, because I don't think I can misrepresent myself if I'm making the order. So.
Rhoda, do you have any questions from your end?
No, I think what I've heard has been really interesting. I think that I love the idea of finding your space and actually having the opportunity to portray sexuality, especially with disability, is so stigmatized and so difficult for the rest of the world to deal with. So I think that the opportunity for disabled people to actually get out there and say, this is what I am, and this is exactly how I want to be, and how I want myself to be portrayed. And guess what? I can do it myself. I don't actually need somebody else to come along and say, let me photograph you. I agree completely with what Robert said. You know, I don't want non-disabled people telling me as a disabled person what I am. And I think that to be able to express it through art is fabulous. I'm not an artist, but to be able to express like that, and I've seen the refraction, and I thought it was amazing, and I thought that more people should see it. I mean, it's something that the rest of the world tends to probably deliberately turn a blind eye to, and I think that when we have the opportunity to make representations like that, and we're doing it ourselves, then it's refreshing, and it's more, it pushes the world a bit further. I think that non-disabled people have to admit then that there's something going on, that we're not all asexual, and that we have exactly the same desires as anybody who is not disabled, or anybody who is straight, or anybody who is queer. And these are just normal attributes that everybody has, and disabled people have them too. I think it's pushing a boundary, especially in Malta, that really needs to be pushed.
In fact, I was going to point out that with regards to LGBT representation on the topics of mental health and disability, last month during Pride, we had a campaign on our social media organized by MGRM and the CRPD, where we had two people, and the thing is, which was a bit disappointing, was the fact that only two people came forward.
Yes.
And they spoke about their personal coming out experiences and dealing with mental health or disability. And the points that come to mind is how can you compare these things, especially in light of visibility and the sense of safeness? Elle, I don't know if you have anything to say about it. So
so as far as disability, safety, and queerness, how they all interrelate, is that the question?
Yes, because I mean,
So
you said you live in the US.
yeah, I'm actually from West Virginia, which is a very conservative area,
Okay.
where being different is not good. It's not safe. I've lived in parts of West Virginia where I've had to change my appearance if I leave the single town where I live, where I know I'm safe. I would dress more masculine. And then there's also the visible signs of autism, the stimming, the physical movements that I would reduce and mask to make sure I'm safer, less drawn attention, and my or the present both queerness and my autism to the world.
So what do you
If that answers your question.
do you, I think before I ask my last question, I want to hear Robert's opinion about this. So the question was about the issue of visibility and safeness and safety with regards to disability and especially with mental health, since it's something which is invisible. You know, you rightly pointed out that the disability that you have is is visible, you know, but when you have something invisible like mental health, it makes it harder for people to understand and empathize for those individuals. So I don't know what's your opinion?
Yeah, my work has like taken me on quite a journey. You know, as I'm creating work with lovers and friends, and I think one of the things that I really one of the topics that has been coming up frequently, like within my artist talks lately, is the act of caregiving and being cared for, and a lot of the time it is so much of the emphasis is put on the caregiver who is physically taking care of someone. Whereas, like, if it was two able-bodied people and they both cared for each other, you know, one isn't thought of as a saint more than the other one. So when you have an interabled relationship, the dynamic changes, and it's often the person who is physically caring for the other person, you know, they're the ones being, you know, thought of, like, oh, they're doing this amazing work, you know, oh, we should really you know, talk about burnout and, you know, this and that. And so what I like, but the thing is, like, we don't really talk about the person being cared for. It is extremely hard to be cared for. You're constantly thinking whether or not you're asking too much of someone, or, you know, not enough. and like oftentimes the person being cared for will put their needs on the back burner to make sure the person that is caring for them, okay. I learned that very quickly, that I needed to take care of everyone around me mentally. And it's exhausting. I mean, from the time I get up till the time I go to bed, I'm dictating what I need, and it can be very, very hard and draining, especially if you know, people are joking like, "Oh, you're so needy," or you know, "You're so bossy," and that really takes a toll on your mental health. And thankfully, like I'm able to communicate this, you know, with the people around me who help me. You know, because like I'm concerned for their health, and I'm concerned, you know, they're concerned for mine. So it's a lot of mental gymnastics that, you know, I have to go through on a daily basis, and yeah, it's just it's exhausting. Just, you know, only being able to use your brain. You know, it just, and even sometimes like at night, you know, if I can't sleep or I'm not comfortable, you know, sometimes I'll just lay in bed for hours, you know, depending on how many times I you know, called my roommate in to help me, which is a real mind fuck. So, because, you know, you don't want to have them come in every few minutes or every hour. Just, I don't know. It's you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, really. So I really like to talk about care within my work, and I mean, care can be amazing, care can be sexy, and I use it in my foreplay. You know, I use it in my sexual adventures, and also like in post play. Like, care is amazing, like, and it shouldn't be thought of as work. Yeah, it's something. I get to have really intimate, amazing relationships with my friends and family that I wouldn't have had if I, you know, wasn't disabled.
Do you want to say anything about visibility and space safety in Malta for LGBT individuals, Rhoda?
I think that in Malta there's still a high level of stigma related to mental health, full stop, and that to have mental health issues, maybe because of your sexual orientation, is something that probably happens a lot. I think that especially where people who are disabled may be still living with parents who are still reliant on parents, and the acceptance of LGBTIQ in Malta is not probably as good as it should be. Affects people's self-esteem and their self-confidence, and body consciousness of disabled people is a huge issue, and self-identity, and to be able to be yourself and to be confident and to have good self-esteem are all really important things. And when you bring in different interests, whether it's disability or sexuality or religion or whatever it is, the more that you pile on, the more difficult it becomes, I think, in Malta to maintain your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And I think that there must be huge problems for some people who have disability in the LGBT community. But I think that with awareness raising and with projects and with art displays and things like this, we can push the boundaries. And I think that that's actually very necessary. I think that the LGBT community has really moved a long way in Malta. I've only been in Malta for 15 years, but I can see the huge strides that the community has made on its own. And I think that if we can drag disability along with it, the intersectionality of these situations, and just it will improve people's self-confidence and their self-esteem and their body image.
Mhm.
And I think that until we have more visibility, it will be an issue for people, but hopefully that's something that is still moving forwards. I see good signs, and I would hope that it would continue in these directions.
As a last question, it's kind of close to what you were saying regarding to the safety, but I was wondering, does the view of disability in Malta hinder people coming out, Rhoda? And then I will ask the same question for the US citizens that we have here. So Elle and Robert. So first we'll get Rhoda's answer, then we'll get to you. Also, just so you know, we have a bit more time because Zoom has been generous to give me a few more minutes, so we're not pressured.
I think that there are huge issues for people who are disabled who need to come out in Malta. I think that disability itself is still fairly stigmatizing, especially if you're looking at mental health issues. And you get into a situation whereby, especially when people are still living with their parents, and people here do tend to live with their parents until they get married, which for some disabled people maybe never. And so if you are continually living in your parents' house who have a certain view of the world which is historic, then it is exceptionally difficult when you know that they are caring for you and that they are meeting your needs, to actually say, well, not only am I disabled, which you view as potentially a problem, but I am also gay. And that may be a huge issue for parents to deal with, and that reflects back on the disabled people themselves, and you get the sense of guilt. And I, as an English person, I feel that Maltese parents put a lot of guilt on their children when they don't come up to their own expectations. And I think that for people from the LGBT community who are disabled, that must be excruciatingly more difficult, because it's a sort of a double dose of not being the norm person that Maltese parents want their children to be. So I think for young people especially, it must be very difficult. And then for older people, I think that once you are accepting of who you are, and you are able to express who you are, and you are confident to be able to say who you are, then the problems relate to acceptance, and whether you feel properly accepted within the LGBT community. I haven't any experience of that, so I don't know how that works, or whether that's an issue that people in the community consider. But I think at the moment there are probably too few disabled people who are prepared to come out, who in order to make themselves visible. So these are issues. I think that disabled people face enough problems that they perceive, without adding another one that they might perceive will make things even worse for them.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst it shouldn't, and it absolutely shouldn't, because we all need to be who we are, my perception is that there is still a way to go for people who are disabled to be properly accepted as part of the LGBT community.
Does the view of disability in the US hinder people coming out?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Kind of along the same lines of what Rhoda was saying, like, you know, a lot of younger disabled folk live with their parents, and that's, you know, due to, you know, not having adequate funding for caregivers, and also kind of like when you're on government assistance, like it keeps you poor. There are so many restrictions, so it doesn't allow you to kind of make a life for yourself independently from your parents, and that's also due to you know, the view of disability, and you know, that we're just lazy and we don't want to work, and all of that kind of mumbo jumbo. But yeah, it's a real thing. You know, I've had friends, you know, people on the internet, you know, tell me, like, you know, that they're gay, but, you know, they're living with their parents, and it's just not conducive to that. And you know, it's this constant pressure that is put on the disabled person of like just trying to make everyone else's life easier so they're not a burden. And, you know, adding another thing to the plate is extremely, extremely difficult, you know, on that person. So I would agree that I think that's pretty much a universal thing throughout the world, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I think we're done. Rhoda, do you have any questions you want to ask?
I would love to know how long you have been doing this artwork, because I haven't seen it before, and I thought it was amazing. They sent me an email and said, "Have you seen this, Rhoda?" And I just sat looking at them for a good sort of like 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm completely blown away. I would love to know a bit about how you work and what you do, if you don't mind.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So my accident was 12 years ago. I was training a double backflip on a trampoline. I was a gymnast and landed on the back of my neck. So it's been about a 12-year journey of kind of exploring. I had just come out a year before. So, I mean, I thought that was more difficult than actually, like, you know, gaining a disability, to be completely honest. Like, coming out to my parents, like, I was so terrified. But after I came out and they showed me, you know, a lot of love, and, you know, it was all just a lot of patience for all parties involved. But, you know, my parents have supported me in everything. They just want me to be happy, and you know, they were never really worried about, like, kind of my drive. You know, I've always been a really driven person. So yeah, after I came out, and then I became disabled, so now I'm like this disabled, like, gay son. But I think what it really started for me was I explored disability and sexuality in my undergrad a little bit, but I wasn't quite ready to go there with my work and just kind of give a raw view of that. And I just, I kept seeing all this, the classic like able-bodied hot guy on Instagram, like, and them doing all these photo shoots and stuff, and I'm like, well, I can do that, and like I said, I learned a lot in those 12 years, especially due to like Dada Fest in Liverpool. I went there, and in 2014, I think, and it just blew my mind open, and I gained such like a sense of pride within disability, and I just kind of it was just a lot of figuring my life out after undergrad. But then when I started my Crypt Flag series in 2017, I had been thinking about this work for a while, and I explored it all through my master's program at Yale, and that's where I like really hit my stride. And another reason why I used myself in the photographs was because I knew I could push myself in front of the camera. I like photographing myself, I always have. And I knew that I would be able to push the content further than I would want to with someone else in front of the camera. So I thought it was really important that if I was going to photograph, someone else someday, I wanted to be, I wanted to inspire others so that I could photograph them eventually. So.
Thank you.
And what about you, Elle? What about your work? What inspired you to focus on your relationship?
I've always been fascinated with relationships in my work. I've always focused on interpersonal, trying to understand my own relationship to other people in general. It's always a very confusing topic. But I think that stems a lot from my own disability before I even knew it. So I kind of used art as a tool to develop my language for a lot of the emotional, social things surrounding all that. And photography was a really intuitive way to do it, a mechanical way that I could relate to. But documenting my relationship with Rue was really special because it was the first time I was being photographed after starting HRT and finally being comfortable in my own skin. So it was finally like the portraits were of me, which was a very rewarding and valuable experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was both searching for ourselves in our gender and with each other is why we were so compelled to create this work over the last year and a half.
It's like it's very lovely because we don't get to see much representation of trans couples, so I think you did a really a huge well done for you, Elle.
Yeah.
It's very touching.
Thank you.
So it warms my heart to see the works like yours and even yours, Robert, for your respective communities. Okay, I think we're good. So if no one has anything else to add, I can end the talk here. So thank you all for being present and for your wonderful stories and sharing of thoughts, opinions, and lessons that we've learned together. I think MGRM and people who work within LGBT organizations need to continue supporting artists and using art as a means of communication and education about these lives that we have around us, you know, that make us who we are. And hopefully the public will be in Malta, and whoever is able to see this on social media will be able to understand and respect and appreciate your lives too. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda, as well.
Thank you.